This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto, Knuckles OX, and Jopi. We resume in the crowded meeting room set up by the heroes, as the location of the Haisakai's headquarters is revealed to be the leader's residence. A gung-ho glitter squad tin toy being purchased by one of the Haisakai's members having given Night Eye a way to confirm Eri's presence on the property. Izuku, Mirio, and the other students are given time to don their costumes, while everyone moves out along with the police. This giving time for Stain and Night Eye to speak one-on-one for the first time really, the latter curious about this man who'd become All Might's temporary sidekick after him, and apparently who'd been a big foundation in young Midoriya's training, much like him towards Lemillion. However, contrary to his expectation, he quickly finds himself coming to relate to him on a few things, and even sees the same obsessive drive in him as in Deku, but it seems a bit more seasoned and tempered. While the young hero known as Deku in his view is certainly well-intentioned, he's also too raw and reckless with his own life for someone striving to be All Might's successor. However, to this point, both Stain and Eraserhead disagree, stating it makes him entirely too worthy to be the next symbol of peace. As they emerge, we see some of the UA students having thankfully gotten some minor upgrades in anticipation for this mission, which could also be hastened thanks to the shortage of upcoming heroes, and slight decline to the current ranks of pro heroes, with Izuku having asked All Might to order him a case full of new prototype full gauntlets from the shields. Though by the looks of his new costume, it seemed like he'd already begun to wear it out with harsh training, while Bakugo now equips on his back what appears to be a long stun baton, something he eagerly boasts to Kirishima to think of as a requip for himself, inspired by Stain's admittedly pretty cool swordplay, while stating it should help him with crowd control should they need it. And so it is that the next morning, the assembled group of heroes and police make their play, gathering outside the Shie Haisakai compound and ordering them to open up as they have a search warrant. Unsurprisingly, the only response this receives is a swarm of villains coming out to challenge them, and seeing that they have no intention of opening the gate, Ryuko busts it down, allowing the raid team to begin their charge. Unfortunately, at the head of these villainous defenders are none other than an enraged Muscular, along with Riki Katsukame, both of whom waste no time in making themselves a nuisance to the heroes. Katsukame's quirk in particular proves frustrating as it cripples any advantage close quarters fighters may have, while Muscular's status as a tank who can endure blows that would fell Nomu's makes them a perfect sword and shield combo, with many heroes having to expend more energy than they should in the opening salvo to avoid being either sucked dry or turned into paste. As a result, chaos soon reigns, with the battle expanding out to the entire neighborhood, a fact which alone would make it newsworthy. But when coupled with the fact that one of the combatants is the known League of Villains member Muscular, it causes every outlet in the area to report on these happenings. Watching this from UA's teacher lounge, All Might can barely sit still, wanting to join the fight even if it will cost him the final embers of One for All. Though level-headed as ever, Principal Nezu urges him not to, suggesting that everything he said when he retired will be for nothing if at the first major sign of villain activity, the old symbol of peace steps back in. If Toshinori truly wants others to take up the mantle, he must let them, which means trusting in his successors. Recognizing the wisdom of the Mouse Man, All Might concedes the point, his thoughts on Deku, Stain, Night Eye, and the others, willing them all to come back alive. Speaking of Night Eye, he is the only one who seems unfazed by the villain's seemingly perfect counter, making short work of a few lesser Shie Haisakai members before coldly stating that he suspected Chisaki would bow down to the League, asking Muscular if the Yakuza leader is as much of an obsequious little worm as he seems. Still, having a grudge against Overhaul for their first encounter, Muscular is quick to brag that Chisaki is nothing but a poser, a claim which upsets Katsukame, who growls that this big oaf wouldn't dare talk that way about the young boss if he were here, reminding him of how Chisaki splattered him all over the floor. As planned, this causes the two villains to turn on each other, and with the central pillars of their defense crumbling, a small group of heroes are able to slip through the cracks, with Deku even giving Muscular a taste of his bloodlust binding on the way out, after blowing past him fast enough to use his head and neck as a starting block for his sprint into the base, once again revealing his desperate need to save someone. This is enough to make the Battle Maniac pass out altogether from the force of the unconventional blow, as well as the sheer density in Deku's restrained killing intent, physically paralyzing him. Seeing the tide turning, Sir Night Eye declares that he'll stay out here with the majority of their forces and deal with this rabble, while Eraserhead can lead the smaller assault force, in order that Shaggy Man accepts, gathering up Fat Gum, Rocklock, Stain, Lemillion, Red Riot, Bakugo, and Deku. As they go, Night Eye can't help but frown, as for a moment a sick part of him hopes that Deku will be injured in this battle, to such a degree that he'll be forced to part with One for All, having seen all too well the way he used a sadistic technique on Muscular, further proving that he is an unworthy brute. However, a moment later, this passes, with All Might's former sidekick feeling sick with himself until something comes along to draw his attention. The revelation that Muscular is not down for the count like they had all thought, with the big man packing on more and more muscle in his fury at being shamed by yet another brat. Knowing it will require some serious firepower to take down the League member, Night Eye whips out a phone, calling a certain man and requesting his help. From the other end, a gruff voice agrees, growling that it would be unfitting if the new #1 hero sat by while his colleagues undertook such a dangerous mission on their own. Good to his word, Endeavor arrives a few minutes later, Shoto by his side, with the boy being assigned to assist the strike team, while the fiery man orders everyone to stand back as he'll face Muscular alone. He then begins outputting a massive amount of heat, directing it all at Muscular, who quickly starts to struggle, as his enhanced bulk makes him especially susceptible to the heat. Seeing this, Neji, Rei, and Ryuko join in with Gravity and Pinky backing them up. Even despite Endeavor's misgivings, they create a fearsome combo, which the Muscle Man cannot stand up against. Meanwhile, down below, Mimic has used his quirk to separate the heroes, with Fat Gum and Kirishima having ended up in the same place as Canon, where they must face off against Rappa and Tengai. However, due to being so much stronger than in Canon, Kirishima is not hurt, causing him to not doubt himself, with him instead responding to Nappa's genuine fighting spirit, which elicits a different memory of the time he asked to learn more about Stain from Deku, learning that the man was a former vigilante and self-professed reformed villain. As a result, the red-headed youth strikes upon an idea, calling out to Rappa and asking if he wants to team up with the good guys, much to Fat Gum's shock. In a surprising turn of events, Rappa is more open to this than one would expect, especially if it means he can fight the kid more. And when Tengai tries to chew him out about this, Rappa only grows infuriated, causing the duo's teamwork to suffer more than usual. As a result, the longer the deathmatch continues, the more ground that heroes gain, causing Rappa to view Kirishima as a worthy rival, which only inspires him to push higher and higher. Seeing this, and genuinely wanting to help Rappa onto the straight and narrow, Kirishima informs the 8 Bullets member that this is just the start of his story, declaring that he's only going to get stronger training under Fat Gum, until eventually surpassing both him and Sun Eater, while his unbreakable form lasts in equivalence to the Red Hero's willpower and declaration to let no blood flow behind him. Refusing to be left in the dust, Rappa then demands to join Fat Gum's agency so he can grow stronger too, causing Fat Gum himself to look stunned. While Kirishima grins, it takes a real man to realize he's on the wrong side, welcoming Rappa to team up with them any day. Subsequently, Tengai is made short work of in the now 3v1, with Todoroki arriving just in time to watch on as Rappa and Kirishima fist bump excitedly. Seeing the arrival of the boy with two-toned hair, Fat Gum tells him to back up Red Riot and keep pressing forward, while he'll stay here so he can keep restraining Tengai and figure out what to do with Rappa. Nodding, the two boys then go on ahead, subsequently meeting up with Amajiki and assisting in his fight. Thanks to their presence and strength, things go a good bit smoother for Sun Eater, with him only needing basic first aid, which allows him to keep moving on, so that he may continue to chase Mirio's back. Meanwhile, Eraserhead and Rocklock are actually the ones sent on ahead, encountering more members of the League, when Toga excitedly mentions that Stain was her inspiration to become a villain in the first place, sounding like a fangirl. Feeling duty-bound to help her, Stain elects to stay behind, with Bakugo growing upset, as he feels his new mentor shouldn't waste time on this extra. But smirking, Stain tells him he can run along with Aizawa if he isn't too worried about his other precious sensei, a claim which seems to anger Bakugo. Though to Stain's shock, the boy suddenly unslings the fanny pack he'd brought along for the mission, and throws it to his weapon-bearing mentor, growling that he'd better know how to use those, before he, Eraser, and Rocklock move on thanks to the opening Stain has created. By doing so, the trio are able to catch up to Deku, who is currently engaged in a duel with Mimic, whom thanks to having taken Trigger, is using the very walls and floors themselves as weapons against the vigilante-trained youth. Growling that he won't let Deku beat one of those lousy Yakuza bastards before he does, Bakugo springs into action, teaming up with his long-term rival to quickly even the fight, as up until now, Deku had been struggling while holding back power for later on. Using a combination of the bloody style and a few of the tricks Bakugo has picked up from Stain by using his stun baton, the pair work well together, breaking through Mimic's barriers and allowing Eraser to catch sight of him and therefore disable his quirk. This takes the tricky fighter out of contention, and so after a brief discussion, Rocklock agrees to circle back and give this guy into police custody, while also backing up Stain if he needs it, allowing Bakugo, Deku, and Eraser to go on ahead. Returning to Stain, he has discovered that the fanny pack Bakugo left him is actually stuffed with the same grenades he gave to Kaminari at the license exams, even having gone to the trouble of pre-labeling his flash and incendiary sweat grenades with red and yellow tape respectively, something which really reminds him of Izuku. Thanks to his knife-throwing expertise, Stain makes great use of these, stunning and disrupting the pair of villains while reflecting on the growth Bakugo has gone through in such a short time, as well as making a mental note to teach the kid how to use throwing weapons like this, as if they're useful in his arsenal, how good could they be for someone who could produce them ad infinitum? Unfortunately, Stain isn't given much time to think about Bakugo when Toga demands his full attention, gushing that she loves the real Mr. Stain, and that it's a real shame that Stain stopped being himself. But that's okay, since if he doesn't want to be the villain he once was anymore, then she will become him instead. She just needs his blood. She then lunges at him, a blood-crazed look in her eyes, one Stain remembers all too well from his villainous days, and so steps back, telling the manic pixie nightmare death girl that he wants to help her, but if she comes at him with a blade again, he will put her down. Giggling now, Toga burbles that it would be so romantic to die together, blades in each other's stomachs, blood sloshing everywhere, while from his perch, Twice laughs that yeah, he'd like to see Toga's bloody guts on the floor, before contradicting himself that no, she's his friend, and so will help her conquer this object of her affection. He then quickly creates about 3 dozen Toga clones, suddenly making the room awfully claustrophobic, as they all swarm their target alongside the original. Making good on his promise, Stain begins to engage in swordplay and slash, reducing them back to the brown goo from which Twice created them. Though even still, it seems like he soon will be overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, let alone factoring in how each clone has Toga's strength and speed. Thankfully, it is at this moment that Rocklock arrives in the passage leading forward, while the team of Shoto, Red Riot, and Sunny approach from behind Stain. Following a brief explanation of the situation, the two first years in Rocklock decide to stay and open up a path for Stain, while Amanjiki volunteers to transport Mimic from here on, as his wounds aren't completely healed just yet, and so for now, he'll entrust his mission to Red Riot. However, Toga is no fan of this plan, pouting that this is between her and Mr. Stain, so if these jerks want to try and horn in on her good time, then they're gonna pay. To prove this point, several of her clones leap on and begin brutally stabbing and slashing at Rocklock, with a few even becoming him thanks to the copious amounts of blood that gushes out of his wounds. Drawing on the last of his previous meal, Amanjiki does one last thing, summoning a tentacle to pull Rocklock to safety before the crazed girl can land a mortal blow, though it is clear that he is in no shape to keep fighting, with the pro telling Stain not to let any of these kids die, before allowing himself to be led away along with Sun Eater and Mimic. Unfortunately, with them gone, Toga's next target is the boys, though keeping his promise to Rocklock, Stain rallies, fighting alongside the two young provisional heroes to push Twice and Toga back. As the trio do so, Stain uses this to impart an impromptu lesson about sensing the minute details that Toga can't help to erase. Like for Kirishima, the fact his sense of touch picks up vibrations better in Unbreakable, and therefore gives him a small warning if her present. Or how Todoroki can sense slight changes in the temperature if he regulates it, meaning he should be able to pick up on the girl's body heat. Using this, the boys are able to further press their advantage, with the pair of villains soon finding themselves cornered and defenseless. In a nicey voice, Shoto tells them that they are under arrest, but before the ne'er-do-wells can be apprehended, a smoky purple void that everyone knows well opens up, with three figures stepping out, those being Spinner, Magna, and Tomura Shigaraki himself. As the former two escort Twice and Toga to safety, with Spinner having to repress his anger at now seeing Stain face to face, but Shigaraki sticks around to extend an offer to Stain to join him. After all, a former villain as impressive as Stain shouldn't lower himself to being a status quo stooge. This comes as quite a shock, though keeping his cool, Stain rebukes this, saying that Tomura's little gang don't have an ounce of honor between them, so he wouldn't want anything to do with him, even if he had chose the wrong path. But chuckling darkly through his hand mask, Shigaraki suggests that in that case, why not settle things with a bet? If the heroes, or more specifically his little pet project Deku, can win the day, save the girl, blah blah blah, then not only will the League stop interfering with him and his buddies, but he'll publicly take responsibility for the Shie Haisakai being his puppets. However, if the situation gets even one iota worse, then Stain will have to renounce his title as a hero and join the side actually making a difference in society. Scoffing, Stain tells this pale freak to shove his bet where the sun don't shine, since he's not stupid enough to gamble with that which he's unwilling to part with, a claim which elicits another wheezy giggle from Tomura, as he asks if Stain means the title or the boy, though he supposes it doesn't matter, since he's not letting him back out now, as it's been way too long since he enjoyed a game. He then steps back through Kurogiri's portal, vanishing with his allies, and leaving the reformed villain to think deeply on what nefarious schemes the League might have cooked up for Deku. Outside, nestled in a hiding spot far from prying eyes, but near enough to watch the action, Magna asks the boss if they're going back for Muscular too, with Shigaraki admitting that he's unsure if the big guy will even be able to run if they get to him. Not to mention, with Endeavor snooping around, it'll draw too much attention if they do try this. Meaning this time, Muscular is on his own. Toga is evidently upset by this decision, declaring that even though she hates the loudmouth brute, he's part of the gang, so they can't just leave him. However, when she looks to Dabi to back her up, the burn villain shockingly agrees with Tomura, though honestly, it seems like he'd agree with anything right now, as he's entirely fixated on Endeavor, grinning sadistically and breathing rather hard in anticipation. Back in the courtyard of the Shie Haisakai hideout, Endeavor paces impatiently. His arrival had heralded an overwhelming victory for the heroes, with every villain out here being subdued and apprehended. However, in the aftermath of the fighting, the police have refused him entry to the hideout, stating that his quirk could prove too dangerous to their allies in such an enclosed space. This had left him nothing to do but stew, thinking resentfully of All Might, and how no one would have dared deny him entry anywhere during his tenure as #1 hero, despite him being the objectively more dangerous individual, a fact it seems no one but him can see. Very well, he'll hold down the fort for now, and place his trust in Shoto and his friends to do the rest. Down below, Deku, Bakugo, and Aizawa have finally caught up with Mirio in the bowels of the Shie Haisakai compound, finding the leader of the Big Three locked in combat with Chisaki himself in an attempt to get to Eri. After stopping Deku from saving her life initially, his guilt is immeasurable, driving him on to fight harder longer, and so even as spikes pierce his sides and the ground vanishes beneath his feet, he presses on, committing himself fully to the vow behind his name. He is Lemillion, the hero who will save 1,000,000 lives, and he ain't gonna rest until Eri is safe and smiling. These words make Overhaul laugh, with him calling them foolish delusions of a schoolboy, though from behind Lemillion, having hidden his shadow for his approach, Deku speaks up, declaring that the one who's delusional is Chisaki if he thinks he's getting away twice. He then rushes headlong into the fray, using One for All to easily shatter the spikes Overhaul has made, while Aizawa uses a Rager to prevent him from making more. Due to all his extra training and mentorship with Stain, Deku is far closer to Mirio's level than in canon, while still using little of One for All's full power, putting Overhaul at a stark disadvantage. Luckily for him, he does have one last bargaining chip, that being Eri, with the girl making a perfect little shield against Deku, who unlike Lemillion cannot strike the villain without hitting her as well. This forces the green-haired youth to briefly fall back, making sure to keep his emotions in check like Nadai advised, allowing Overhaul to focus on one enemy, a much more manageable prospect, with him quickly surmising that he needs to take out Lemillion's quirk if he wants to stand a chance here. Thus, here again, Eri proves a perfect pawn, as with a malicious cackle, Overhaul tosses her into the air overhead, yelling that if the heroes want the filthy brat, they can have her, before loading a clip of quirk-destroying bullets into his gun. Having studied Lemillion's quirk over the course of their fight, he knows that the boy will need to make himself tangible to catch Eri, at which point, he can shoot him, obliterating his filthy quirk permanently. From there, it will be easier to take care of Deku with a second shot, and perhaps if he has time, he'll even take out Eraserhead, allowing him to reactivate his quirk and finish them all. Either way, the second the blonde brat makes contact with Eri, he and his comrades are as good as dead. However, there is one thing Chisaki had failed to take into account, and that is Deku. With the boy seeing the masked man cock the gun in slow motion, and thanks to both the trauma of Bakugo having taken a bullet for him before, as well as being able to think like a villain, and assuming that Overhaul is completely willing to kill Eri despite them, Deku realizes there's no way he can control his emotions right now. As this fills Deku with a familiar dark fury that gnaws on his ambitions, and so yelling that he'll kill him before he gets the chance, he throws himself at Overhaul, distracting him long enough for Mirio to grab Eri, then retreat back to their allies. A moment later, Deku is on top of the villain, unloading on him with such savage ferocity that Bakugo and Mirio briefly wonder if their duty as heroes requires them to save Overhaul from Deku. Meanwhile, Chisaki is afraid. He's never felt so hopeless before, so utterly devoid of agency to end his own torment. And were he not in the process of receiving several concussions at once, he might have reflected on the irony that this is exactly how he'd made Eri feel for so many years. Instead, only one thought runs through his head, the absolute certainty that this young hero will kill him any moment now. On this fact, he and Deku are in complete agreement, as the youth continues to beat him fanatically, almost anticipating a fatal crack or death rattle that will indicate Overhaul has at last faced true justice. But this is where we'll be leaving our story off for right now. That'll do it for issue number 1 of part 9. I know you've all waited a long time for me to get back to this, and by now, even anime onlys are far past the point of the Haisakai arc. But I didn't want to return with a super long runtime on the first new installment, since I'm hoping we can get this series back to frequent updates now that my plate of old ongoing stuff is cleared mostly up for the most part, except a few things here or there. This of course also lets me make sure that next part comes a bit quicker and is hopefully a bit better than it would be crammed into this one. Also, a very big shout out to my pickled pal, Pickled Dill, who helped me flesh my script out. They actually did so as a birthday present for me unasked, which was super kind. And of course, to our super kind channel supporters, Knuckles0x, Crimson Manifesto, Jopey, Zach Haji, Pizza15X, Aaron Winters, Normandy1998, Xiao Pai, Coder SV3, Ronan Charizard, Daniel Smith, Dylan Wolfdog31, Infernet Beast 326, Jay Ray, Johnny, Narku, Omar Cousins, Snow Slash Memes and more, Stephen Norton, Terran, The Shadows, Vegeta What Ifs, Alamancer, B, Lyman Rogers, Omar Muhammad, Aka, Arcane of the Heart, Tay, Inebriated, John Sullivan, Corporal Atkins, Trent Rouse, Dark Shadows, Pokemon Trainer Cam, Riverjoy, Elijah Edwards, Mr. Hamtastic, Jesus is King, Havin Onion, Angel Gonzalez, David Spalding, Lil T910, Joseph Lau, Blaze9526, Trainer Rad 164, Luca Reynolds, Baron Stormblade, Ono, Chris Macariano, Lily, Zimra, Red Violet, DeAndre, Gerald Smith, John Self, Jacob Whitaker, Massive Oak Woodtree, Demon Set, True Trade, Dutch McGee 101, Bruce Boswick, Robert Arstegard, Illis Cyclops, Craig Shyman, Jal Matten, King Music, Ballcore, Zach Eubanks, Crab Trooper 4552, NBA Fan, Courtney Hawkins, Orion 101, Christian Kyler, Dominic Wiltz, Jester DeMille, Cyber Samurai, The Storybuster, One Cold Pirate, Ganning 667, Dr. Ember, Chris, Kieran Lightfoot, Ooga Booga, Kier Skywalker, Andre, Chandler Does What Ifs, and Monaki Modilla.